sent a letter to the club saying they didn't like the idea of us going in. We had a meeting again, and I felt very strongly about it at the time, and I thought, well, if this is a new world, a new avenue to go into, and we just went on with it.
The first time we played in the European Cup at Main Road against Anderlecht, we won 10-0. And the centre-forward, Mermans, who played for Belgium, he said, I couldn't understand it. He says, they're winning 6-0 and they're running about as though they haven't scored. And this is how they wanted to play. Just keep going the whole 90 minutes.
Floodlights at Main Road, Manchester. Having lost 3-5 in Bilbao, United must beat their opponents by 3 clear goals to reach the semi-finals of the European Cup. They begin with an opening offensive that already seems to point the way to victory. But Atletico de Bilbao are renowned as a cracked Spanish 11, and Manchester knows it only too well. 4 minutes before half-time, Manchester's Violet goes through, and it's a goal! Manchester's second came from a free kick, Taylor doing the rest. He and Berry made the third, and Manchester was set for the semi-finals.
United retained their league championship with 3 games to spare, but an unimaginable treble chance was on. The stunning comeback against Bilbao had put them in the last 4 of the European Cup, whilst Birmingham were waiting in the semi-finals of the FA Cup.
John Barry receives and makes for the penalty area. He beats Ken Green. Everyone expects him to pass, but he fools them all and shoots. Manchester fans are wild with joy, but there's more to come. Outside left, David Pegg is on the move straight from the restart. Jeff Hall blocks him, but he retrieves it and tries again. Over to Bobby Charlton, who slams it home.
United's European semi-final was a rather different matter, though. Their opponents were Real Madrid, Di Stefano, Copa, Gento and all. Both David Pegg and Eddie Coleman confessed to feeling sick with nerves at the prospect of facing the holders in front of 125,000 inside the Bernabeu. After holding out for an hour, United conceded 3 goals. But a scrambled reply from Tommy Taylor offered them hope. They'd learnt a lot, not least about some of Madrid's ugly cynicism in the tackle. Taylor's goal wasn't the prettiest, but it set up the return. Old Trafford's first floodlit European game.
European Cup semi-final, second leg. Madrid won the first encounter by 3-1, so United must get 3 clear goals in this match to reach the final. After 25 minutes, Copa takes a pass in the penalty area and shoots a low one. So began 9 minutes of dramatic, decisive soccer. Here's Madrid's second. Gento passes, Real shoots. Too easy. On come the floodlights for the second half. Manchester, 4 goals down in the aggregate, need a miracle to save them. Is this it? Pegg centres. Taylor does the rest. Another Pegg pass, and Charlton scores a beauty. They've equalised, but it's farewell to European Cup hopes.
The FA Cup was to prove a heartbreaker too. United were firm favourites to complete a domestic double at Aston Villa's expense. But with only 6 minutes played, they lost their goalkeeper Ray Wood to a mindless challenge from Peter McParland. Wood's cheekbone was shattered, and although he somehow reappeared later, centre-half Jackie Blanchflower had to put on the gloves and jersey. No substitutes in those days. Ironically, it was McParland who twice beat him before Tommy Taylor pulled a goal back for United. Too little, too late. The treble chasers had bagged just 1.
Wood, Fox, Byrne, Coral, Jones, Edwards, Berry, Whelan, Taylor, Violet, Pegg.
The Bouncing Babes were now household names and seemed destined to be for many years to come. They were as popular as they were gifted. Youthful, athletic, clean-cut. The boy wonders. Everyone wanted to be seen with them. Everyone wanted to see them play. All the lads and lasses, smiles upon their faces, walking down the Warwick Road to see him at Busby's Aces. In their last league game at Old Trafford, they beat Bolton 7-2. 2 days before their fateful departure for Belgrade, they won a classic at Arsenal by 5-4. The club had decided to charter a plane for the European quarter-final after serious delays returning home from a preliminary round tie in Brussels in September. It was the journey from which 8 of them would never return.
Belgrade, Wednesday, February the 5th. Manchester United have flown to the Yugoslav capital to play their return match with Red Star Belgrade, the champions of Yugoslavia. United only have to draw to make sure of a place in the European Cup semi-final, the round in which they were beaten last year. The Belgrade Stadium is packed to capacity, everyone eager to see the young men whose fame has rung round Europe.
The game was a 3-3 draw. The Busby Babes' farewell performance was a fitting one. Dennis Violet scored after 90 seconds as United raced into a 3-0 lead. The budding Bobby Charlton added 2 more in as many minutes, the first after an exhilarating run. The semi-finals were beckoning again.
There was a feeling that we were as good as anybody around in the world.
Without a shadow of a doubt, I believe they would have been Britain's greatest ever footballing side.
Here was a team who'd come to the prime at 20 years of age, and people just didn't realise that it could happen so quick.
With the team we had and the age we had, they just gathered experience. I could probably sat in my office for about 10 years because it was all there.
Great players who were on the verge of being world stars. You know, this is, and you've got to try and imagine before television, the word would go around, and the word was obviously going around as it was. You know, Manchester United, watch Manchester United, look at their results, and then suddenly the whole thing has gone, and all the future suddenly, you know, is not as certain as we all thought it was going to be.
On the fringe of a Munich airport lies the wreckage of an airliner, still smouldering from a crash in which 21 people were killed. Tragedy enough at any time. But in that plane were a group of young men who were almost the personal friends of millions. Manchester United, the finest soccer team Britain has produced since the war. And 7 of them died in the crash. 10 others, as well as their famous manager, Matt Busby, were injured. Some so seriously that their lives hung in the balance. Busby's Babes, as they were affectionately called, were on their way home from Belgrade when the disaster struck. They were on top of the world. Their 3-goal draw with Yugoslavia's Red Star team had put them through to the European Cup semi-finals. They had high hopes of the English FA Cup. Now those hopes are snuffed out, like the lives of 7 of their finest players. Duncan Edwards injured, Bill Fuchs injured. Mark Jones killed. Ray Wood injured. Eddie Coleman killed. David Pegg killed. Dennis Violet injured. Tommy Taylor killed. Roger Byrne killed. Bill Whelan killed. John Barry injured. At the time of going to press, Matt Busby was fighting for his life. The team secretary, Walter Crickmer, was killed. Manchester, from the moment the news came through, was a city in mourning. Newspapers sold as fast as they could be printed. It was as though every family in a city of 750,000 people had suffered a personal loss, and so indeed they had. At Old Trafford, the saddest football ground in the world, the flags flew at half-mast. And on hundreds of other football grounds, other flags were being dipped in sympathy. For this disaster is perhaps the most tragic single blow British sport has ever suffered.
The shock, the grief, the hopeful vigils continued long after the crash that had instantly claimed the lives of 21 passengers. Coach Bert Wally, trainer Tom Curry and left-back Jeff Bent were also lost to the club. Johnny Berry and Jackie Blanchflower survived but never played again. Amongst those receiving intensive hospital care were both Matt Busby and Duncan Edwards. Manchester waited and hoped that their famous names would be added to the list of survivors.
Well, I was lucky I got out because my safety belt was broke and I crept out on my hands and knees. Just as I got to the outside of the plane, I seen a few of the boys hanging about, Peter here, and I called him to come back. I heard a kiddie crying and brought me to the senses. I lifted the kiddie out and handed it to Peter. He took it away. Well, I went round to the back of the plane and the first person I saw was Billy Foulkes.
I did remember to put my head below the seat. Otherwise, I think I've had part of it knocked off. But I got my head well below the seat and strapped myself really tight into my belt. And because I knew there was something it was going to crash. I could feel it, you know. And and I was lucky